Oh, I scheduled 5:35. That's probably why. All right, we're live. Welcome, everybody, to the first OPEX RC podcast. We're still working on some names, but we're going to be delivering a weekly podcast on coaching, education, some CrossFit news, anything related to your fitness and health. We're going to have a variety of guests, but today my name is Roman. This is Coach Sam. If you don't already know us, most of our audience probably right now is either people that know us or within the OPEX community. So, we have a little podcast introduction. We're going to go over what we're going to talk about, but what you been up to today?
Well, I think before we get into that, I mean, this is like the first unveiling of our newest coach, which is Roman. And this has been a year in the making. So I'm really excited to finally have Roman on the team. Yeah. And not only will he be a coach, but he's going to be in charge of a lot of the content and media we put out, which he is very competent and artistic in that sense. So I'm really excited for that. And I'm excited to spend time chatting with him on this platform.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess if people don't know, I've been involved with, I just took you off the screen. I've been involved with I've been involved with OPEX for almost 12 years now. I started CrossFit in 2011 in November. So this is 12 years. And then about 6 months in, our gym started a mentorship process with OPEX. And since then, I've either had an OPEX coach of some sort, been doing the education and, learning as much as I could, being involved in CCP, basically anything OPEX would put out. So I've been wearing the brand for a long time, and it evolved over the years as OPEX changed and got a lot more into the education, into CrossFit heavily, and now, branching into, general fitness as well, which they have, but they've been kind of teaching that. And yeah, it feels good to be, it's kind of full circle. Like I was brought in through OPEX, and before Sam was even a part, Sam's brought in, and he was a huge, played a large role in my coaching and competitive career, and still does as my coach. So it feels really good to be a part of the team.
Yeah, I think we're over 5 years now.
Yeah,
together.
We just 5 years from coaching.
Our anniversary. Yeah.
Learned a lot of fitness, learned a lot about life. I lived next to him for a little bit of time too. When I moved out to Arizona, got to experience OPEX HQ. That was really cool. Learned a lot. I was on my own, just married, and now we're back home in Georgia. So this will help us keep connected in the remote life.
Yep. Well, what are we going to dive into today?
Yeah. So basically, we're going to kind of intro to people what the podcast is going to do, what our goal of the podcast is, which a lot of it is going to be from what the audience is going to want. So if you guys want questions answered, coaching related, CrossFit related, fitness related, health, nutrition, we're going to bring on a lot of the coaches from OPEX to discuss these things. And it gives us, an additional hour a week to chat and catch up. So that's always good. And with the other coaches as well. So yeah, with future shows, our goal is to bring on coaches from OPEX, possibly some other coaches as well, whether they're within the OPEX community or actually working for OPEX, to discuss, tough topics or even easy topics, but to give their experiences, with coaching athletes or with their knowledge and education about, whatever that topic is. So that'll be exciting. If it'll be a broad spectrum of topics. The goal is to get people to understand what our coaches are capable of, whether you want to work with them or whether you just want to learn from them. A lot of our coaches have extremely unique backgrounds and experience coaching, some hundreds of athletes individually. So they may be able to lend knowledge to you or give you something or a little piece that you could really run with or help you in your coaching career or your personal life. And other potential shows could just be a little more entertainment based, as in just, chatting with the coaches. If you really like a coach and you just like hearing them talk, and maybe maybe you just want to tune in and hear how their day or their week's going. But most of the show will hopefully will be structured around, a specific topic and something to learn from. Our goal right now is every Thursday. Hopefully we'll have a live show for you. It might change a little bit, or if we have some other coaches on, we might go on at different times, but our goal is to have live shows where you can interact. You can post a comment. If anyone's listening right now, you could jump in and post a comment. We can answer it for you. So that'll make the conversation sometimes maybe a little better for the audience. If there might be a lot of people listening that have a similar question to you, they can ask it. Maybe we'll be able to jump in and answer it for you. Or that could just lend to a whole new episode if it's a really deep question, and we can push that to another week for you. Up today, this is the competitive conversations segment. So our goal is to talk a little bit more about the CrossFit and fitness sphere in terms of competition. We're leading into, getting closer to the season start. We've been released a lot of details. You've probably seen, if you're listening and you're interested in CrossFit, you've seen a lot of different podcasts or posts or videos about the new season changes. So basically, we've had an adjustment to quarterfinals and semifinals for basically every age group, every division, and a lot of complaining, critiquing, and I would say like not the best or not the most positive comments have been lent towards CrossFit for this, and maybe rightfully so. But CrossFit's in control. They are going to decide what happens, and we just have to work around it. If you have clients or if you're an athlete yourself, all you can do is, push forward and make a plan for this season. So, because it's not going to change. So for those who are on the bubble of getting into semifinals or have clients that are pushing to that, there isn't going to be 20 extra spots. It's now 40 spots for every division. And that might be better for some continents, but in North America and in Europe, where a majority of the participants are currently, it's going to be a lot tougher for you to get in. And it's going to be even tougher now that there's 25% allowance of people into quarterfinals. So scores are going to be tougher to, if there's going to be a lot more people putting up better scores and making it harder to get points. So what do you think about that, Sam? What do you think about the 25%, and how could someone approach it and say, like if this is good or bad for me?
Well, I personally, I don't think it's a good thing, because like I looked at, and maybe we'll just do that now. I looked at the numbers yesterday comparing somebody that finished top 10% this year in the Open, which was for the men in North America East, was 4,300th place. That was top 10%. And I looked at their scores comparative to somebody that finished top 25%, which was 10,750th place. And I've compared the two scores to just get an idea of how far apart would those people be. So I'm going to give you the numbers. So the first event,
is that an individual male?
Yeah, individual male. I did it for females
worldwide.
No, this was region specific, North America East.
Got it.
So this is top 10% scores. Event 1, they did 186 reps, which is 6 ring muscle ups. Event 2, they did 147 reps, which was 22 burpee pull-ups in the round of 30. Event 3, which was the thruster at the end of event 2, they did 207 pounds, about 95 kilos for our metric people out there. And then event 4, they did 207 reps, which was 0 snatches at 185. That was top 10% this past year. Top 25%, they did 3 ring muscle ups on the first workout. They did 10 burpee pull-ups. So they got 135 reps, 10 burpee pull-ups. Of the 30, they thrustered 180 pounds, and they did 9 snatches at 135. So big discrepancy on the last one. And then the first one and the second one were somewhat close, and then a big discrepancy on the thruster weight. And then if you look at the females, very similar theme as well, where top 10% female, North America East, did 1 ring muscle up, did all the strict handstand push-ups in the last one, whereas the top 25% female did no ring muscle ups and did no snatches at 95 pounds. So the disparity between them is much greater on the female side, which you would anticipate.
Yeah.
But the big takeaway I noticed from that was that absolute strength and strength, speed and high skill gymnastics are huge separators between top 10%, top 25%.
Yeah.
So why is that important? If the gap is that big, then when they go into the quarterfinals, they're going to have to design something that allows these people who can't do any strict handstand push-ups to get some sort of work done, and then they're kind of cut off, and then another threshold, and then another threshold. So an example of that would be the last open workout from this year, where it was wall walks into handstand push-ups, ascending barbell load. Another example would be the 2019 open, the second event with the ascending clean weight. So you could see something like that where it's ascending and load.
Yep.
So I think the inclusion to top 25% is going to force them to create tests that have like step points. That in my head, that's the only way they're going to have to approach it. I don't think it's great for a lot of logistical reasons. I mean, it's already challenging if you have 10 people doing quarterfinals, and then you have to have the right setup with the camera, with the equipment,
the judge.
And so now if you do top 25% and you say you double that amount, now you have 20 people. That's a lot. So I'm very hesitant. Along with Masters, since at the same time, which blows my mind. So yeah, it's going to be a lot on gym owners trying to figure out how to do this effectively, and also take care of all their other members as well, who, are wanting to get training in. So it's very interesting, but something you mentioned, which I'm glad you did, at the end of the day, you sign up, you pay to play the game, and you got to play by the rules, and you got to, whether or not you agree with it, it's the game you're a part of. So you have to work with it. So yes, we can, I don't say criticize, but we can look at it objectively and subjectively and give our opinion. But regardless of that, we're going to have to work with it as best we can for our own clients. So I'm really interested to see how they're going to navigate that, because it seems as though they added a lot of logistical challenge to themselves. So it's interesting, very interesting to me.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, the thought process, not thinking of any of the things you mentioned is, oh, we can get it all done on one weekend. If you want to compete in both, now you can, and you can do the same workouts. So I'm a Masters, I'm 36. I'm like, well, I would still like to do the individual quarterfinals, see where I stack up. I could just do it all in one weekend, not have to peak twice. Everything can be done at once. There are some, like, the idea of that sounds good. Like, yeah, that makes it easier for one person, not for the community. And then, I mean, more funding for the sport is obviously one thing that they were looking at. Like, hey, we can now increase to 25%. Anyone can do it if they want to. But as you said, now they're going to have to do different style of workouts, because even in the top 10%, there was a ton of people already complaining that the workout started with 275 pound clean and jerk for the males, started with a 225 front squat and handstand walk. That was the beginning. So people who already signed up making top 10% were really upset. They didn't even have, of the 10%, only about 5% total signed up for the original quarterfinals. So I don't know if that's going to entice more signups, or if it's going to end up just leveling out and be similar, because some people will just be upset that they're doing it this way anyway.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. Two things. One, on the revenue piece I want to mention, but first on what you just mentioned. If the intention is to drive more revenue for them, if they're looking at it solely from a business perspective, then they would have to make the quarterfinal events enticing for people finishing top 25% all the way up to 10. So 10 to 25, they have to see, because they're going to see the events, and you don't have to pay before the events are released. Like, you could pay after their release. So if it does open with a 275 pound clean and jerk, then a lot of them be like, I'm not going to pay $50 or whatever it is to do this. Yeah. So that's where I think they're going to have to use some sort of gate progression type event, where it's like you have to do a certain amount of work in a certain time, or you have to complete this skill before you get to the next one. Like, I'm already thinking about 17.3, which, because I remember this workout crushed me, but it was chest to bar and snatches ascending, but instead of it solely being chest to bar, you might do toes to bar, chest to bar, and bar muscle ups, and you do ascending snatch load. And so people can do maybe the first 2 bars or first 2 waves, but then the next 2 or next 3 they can't get into. So that would be enticing, because then somebody who is 20th percentile could look at that and go like, oh, I could get in there a bit. I'm not going to be stopped on the first few reps. So so that'll be interesting. On the funding piece that you mentioned, yes, at first glance, it looks like it's a play to make more money. The problem is, in order for the sport to grow, you need I'm not going to act like I know this well, but from my lens, you need a more robust developmental system and structured steps in the athletic progression. Like, there needs to be an opportunity for the younger kids to compete and develop themselves, which there kind of is, but it's pretty loose. And then the next stage, the next stage, the next stage. And so why I say that is, they took a lot of places away from the people that actually really matter, which are the semifinal athletes, because those athletes, some of them are on the border of trying to make it a full-time thing, whereas others are, it is the full-time thing. And so now you've made it even harder for a lot of them who are very important for the growth of the sport, because they become the athletes that get leveraged in media and creating a following and creating an image. And so you actually want to benefit or boost that side of the spectrum. Because like, if you think about the people who aren't that great, who are just normal people, but they're still fit, but they don't really take it seriously. And then you have the people that take it really seriously, like it's their thing. They essentially took from this side and they're putting more on this side. And I think that's actually backwards. I think if anything, they should have put more on this side. Because to your point, I think I heard something that like the person who finished 100th in Europe in the quarterfinals this past year would have finished top 60 in almost any other region in the quarterfinals. So Europe's getting like the worst end of this stick, because Europe is so stout and deep, and it has so many people competing on both the male and the female side. And now it's only 40, which is ridiculous. And it's growing. Like, people are very interested and love CrossFit and the competing side of it. I have a lot of clients in Europe, and they're very they have a deep desire for it. It's a big deal to them. And I went to the semis this year in Berlin, and that was awesome. Like, so many people came, and the energy and just everything. So you want to facilitate the desire to grow and turn it into something bigger over there. And by taking spots away, that's going to make it challenging for the athletes and also for the community as well. So very interesting and unfortunate for the subgroup that I think needs to be more supported or better supported, because they're very important for the growth of a sport.
Yeah. And taking away 20 spots from a lot of the bigger regions, you could say that that's taking away funds from there, because that's 20 people, 20 families, 20 friends, 20 affiliate members that aren't going to visit or invest in possibly the semifinal. So that might not be the biggest hit financially, but it could in some spots, like, in Europe where people are traveling. We saw one of your clients, Manu, just had a huge group come with him. That's ticket sales. That's things bought. That's more people interested in, like, oh man, this was so sweet, I want to do quarterfinals next year. I want to. And it almost disincentivizes now, because, people aren't going to, they're going to feel like it's more elitist and they can't get there. So it's kind of out of reach. And then if they want to do quarterfinals, it's like, well, everyone can do quarterfinals now. So it's really just an extension of the open with the workouts the way they are.
Yeah, that's a good point, because last year, or not last, I keep thinking last year, but it's not last year. It was earlier this year. Yeah. I did the second open workout, which was the burpees and shuttle run and thruster. And my scores were okay, but I would have had it done pretty well on the first and third to have qualified for quarterfinals. And so it was good doing that, because I'm still in, I think, decent shape. But the fact that I did it and I go, oh wow, I'd actually have to like push a little bit on both of these if I wanted to qualify, it made it a lot more salient to me that, okay, it's actually, I would say, an accomplishment to finish top 10% in the open in your region. Like that, you have to have some really good fitness, well-rounded fitness to do that. And now you've kind of pulled away that incentive and accomplishment by making it top 25%. And so you water it down a lot. And now if somebody goes into the quarterfinals, it's going to take a lot of time and work to get them to be even close to the top 40. I mean, especially in the bigger regions. So it's because previously that could be your North Star. It's like, I want to qualify for quarterfinals, and I had a lot of clients like that. And now they'll easily qualify, but the chance of them getting top 40, that might be like a 4-year thing with them, and that's harder to like wrap your head around. Because even for you, I mean, you were in a qualifying spot this year, and then you got a ridiculous penalty, and it dropped you back to like 67th or something. But I think you were like 54th initially. So you were in and then out, but now like you're 54th, and it's been 5 years in the making. Yeah. And now this next year, you're like the outside looking in, and this is going to be going into year 6. So it's unfortunate, because I think it pulls away the prestige for the people for the bulk of participants who would really enjoy it and really think of it as a worthy pursuit. And then for somebody like yourself, it makes it really harder to now achieve the next stage, which is something that, of course, you've been working towards for a long time.
Yeah. For me, when I saw it, I was thinking, I was like, good. It's going to be even better. It's going to be even more satisfying to qualify.
Yes.
But which you brought up, I got a penalty. I got a penalty for not standing up all the way on when I go back and look at it, on about 13 squats on the front squat workout, and I got a 90-second penalty. So I was moved out just out of a spot. It's okay. I got the penalty. I didn't do what I was supposed to correctly. I can live with it. But I knew people that were now in qualifying positions after these changes that didn't have all of their videos watched. They didn't have, if you're looking at your app and, you're in quarterfinals and you are in that position, you have green marks, like green check marks if your video has been watched, or I can't remember, but another green check mark and like a little note, hey, you've had an adjustment to your score. So these people didn't have that, and then they didn't, all the way until the end. So they didn't even get videos checked. So the problem here is now that you have way more people putting up, maybe false scores, maybe scores with poor reps, and they didn't even have enough to watch all of the people that qualified. So now what we're going to have, if CrossFit is lucky, they have double the amount of participants, but there's no way they're going to be watching. So I think it brings an ethical dilemma to these people that are in the bubble or in a qualifying spot where other people aren't being judged fairly, but they're getting points taken away from them just from, one guy who does really good on a few workouts. If that happens a few hundred times, across the board, it can be a bad spot for a lot of people.
Yeah. And they can't feasibly review every video of every person who qualifies.
Yeah.
Like there's just, so like they couldn't do it last year. If you did the math, Kyle Ruth, I remember him posting about, he did the math, and it's like, it's literally impossible. They don't have enough people who could watch all of the minutes required of every event from every person that qualified to justify whether or not they had they got a green check mark or not. And so now you've increased the pool. So I don't know. It's unfortunate. And again, the people that are going to suffer or be, get the bad end of the stick of this are the people like you who are vying for a spot. And, so that's unfortunate. But again, there's still some unknowns. So we don't know exactly how they're going to accommodate for that. Because maybe your scores won't count unless you post a score with a video for all events.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the case.
Yeah, so like you can't home run, a max lift because you're a weightlifter, and then kind of mail in everything else, and then that counts towards the actual outcome. I don't know how they would do that. It's probably some sort of software thing they'd have to do, but it's like you have to do all of your events, you have to have all videos, and then only then do your scores actually count on the leaderboard, which that could be good, because now you're you're incentivizing people to actually have to go through the process of doing it as correctly as possible, and setting themselves up to be scrutinized if they didn't meet a standard.
Yeah.
So
we'll I can't imagine that would be very hard to have some type of parameter where your score is eligible on the competition leaderboard if you have all videos, if you've completed each workout. I mean, those are going to weed out a lot of people. And then, another step I think is making all YouTube links public. So, maybe it's not sent to like community judging yet because, Kyle and Max were actually talking about this. Then, you might just get a couple,
trolls,
a couple of your buddies to just go in there. Yeah. And just be like down voting everyone's scores. But maybe just something like that. Like, hey, these look pretty good. This looks really bad. So then HQ could just go ahead and quickly look at that. I think that would be a great idea. I don't know if HQ is even thinking about that. I think from what I understand and what it seems like, they think their process works really well, which is sad because it doesn't work too well, but hopefully they can make some improvements on that because, they're looking for more signups, and just allowing people to sign up more isn't necessarily going to want people to buy the product. They want a good product and that will, make people want to join.
Yeah.
So
do you want to chat about the age group so we can bring some excitement and some good news to the conversation?
Yeah. So age group getting more spots, I guess that is good because the age group is competitive, very competitive. I have a male at my gym in his 40s and he is very fit and he has to take every workout very seriously. He's having to redo a bunch because we're talking like to make a 10-second difference. So allowing more spots and more people to compete and knowing that, the Masters makes up a large portion of the competition pool within CrossFit, which is good for funding and for community. For us, the Masters usually get, in my gym specifically and the gyms that I am aware of, they have maybe even more community around the Masters than they do the individual competitors, in their younger years.
Because they're a better representation of real life because they have families, they have jobs, they have commitments. Whereas the young aspiring athletes, it's all they do. So they're much more relatable. But the Masters, they're such an important part of the sport because they actually have the resources to travel, compete, hire coaching, build a following or build around their gym, inspire people. Cause again, they're relatable. Like the Masters are super important. And especially also for our business, because the Masters, again, they have the resources, the time, the wherewithal to like have a coach and make it be a prosperous relationship in pursuit of this fitness goal they have. So the Masters are, a very important part of this equation. And I'm really pleased to see, one, they separated from the games, so more energy and attention could be devoted to them, which also allowed them to open more spots for the Masters, which is great because, like you said, it is so competitive. I mean, qualifying this past year and previous years, finishing top 10 in the world to just qualify was like unbelievable. I mean, it was very, very difficult to do that. So now
it's
I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but now it's top 40 men and women for 35 to 39, 40 to 44, and 45 to 49. It's top 40
for the games.
50, for the games.
Yeah.
50 to 54 and 55 to 59 is top 30. And then 60 plus is top 20 men and women for the games, which is a
large field.
That's almost what the semifinal was this past year and the previous year. So it's definitely a big field, but that's roughly the field of a normal competition. Like Legends is coming up in a few weeks here in Arizona, and it might be top 30-ish that are competing, I think, from qualifier and invites. So it's going to be a comparable size to what a traditional Masters competition, also an individual. Most individual competitions are around 30 to 40. The ones that are higher quality and more reputable. So huge increase in spots for Masters, which is great. And then to add to that, top 200 from quarterfinals advance to semifinals, which this past year it was top 30 advanced to semifinals. So a large increase are moving on to semifinals, which is great because now you've re-incentivized masters to pursue the goal of achieving qualifying for the semifinals. Because previously, a good goal was, of course, make it to quarterfinals. And then from quarterfinals to semifinals was this ginormous jump. Like that's top, it was top 10% in your age group. And then you had to go top 30 next. Now it's top 25% of your age group, which is a lot. And then top 200, which is a much more feasible goal for a lot of masters athletes. So I have a lot of clients who are reinvigorated, like, all right, I can actually do something now in my division. I can make it to semis. Will I make the games? Probably not. Maybe, who knows? But they're more incentive. The incentive has gone up significantly. Whereas as we talked about earlier, it has dropped a little bit for some of the individuals. So I'm really pleased to see that, and it makes me excited for a lot of my clients who like fit perfectly in that position of they can finish top 200. And now the thought of going to the semifinals is very exciting to them. And so, from a coach perspective, it's great.
Yeah. And I think it could be a better competition for an online semi now that there are more people. Cause in my experience watching a friend of mine do it, him getting a 28th in a workout, and he was, maybe only 1% off from 14th. But that's a huge point gap. Now that there are other people, a larger pool, maybe it could, lend to the person that's a little more even keel across the board to have good points, because there's other people separating between a lot of the competitors. Because top 30 in an online format is hard. It makes it that there's probably one large group that's ahead, and then the rest is kind of even in points. So I think that could be a better competition format for them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too if they do anything similar to what we suggested for the individuals, where, because if you now have 200 people, let's say somebody has 2 really good scores and then the rest are kind of a wash.
Yeah.
And they don't have videos for those. Do those 2 scores, do they count towards, or do you have to have all scores submitted with videos in order for it to count? Because it is 40 people, which is 20% of the qualifying field, which is a pretty good amount. But you have to try to safeguard against outliers or things that will influence the outcome in a negative way, where your pure expression of the test is diluted a little bit in what place you finish. So there's definitely a lot of things to come out. Like, I think the rule book, I don't know when that happens, maybe next month or maybe January, hopefully next month. And then that'll give us a lot more insight on.
Well, they hinted at possibly November. They said,
oh, wow. Well,
could be by the end of November. Yeah. So that would be great. It would cause a lot of stir, I'm sure, but hopefully things will at least just be more clear. But yeah, so we've kind of chatted about the new season changes. We're upcoming on the season. Right now, in my mind, we're still in the off season. How I would break it down is we're kind of in part 2 of the off season, which is for a lot of people is kind of the transition into the preseason, where you're still working on, you're still focused on improving what you need to improve. That may not be where it's, if we're in January, we're improving on what we have to improve because there's a competition coming up. So, do you think leading into now, anything should change as the season has changed now, or should people be thinking I'm staying the course until we get closer to the official season, closer to January in the Open?
Yeah, well, so real quick to give a little more context, the Open has been pushed back, I think, 2 weeks from what it was this past year. So the last, forgive me, yes, the last week
to March 18.
Yes, there we go. So the tail end of February, essentially March till mid-March. So it's a little bit later. But what's really big difference is the time from the end of the open to the quarterfinals, which is it's pretty much a month. So there's a month gap now, which previously was 2 weeks. So you finished the open, you had a week, and then you had a half week, and then you started the quarterfinals. Yep. So that changes things quite a lot, because what I would do previous years, which you probably did with your clients as well, the preparation for the quarterfinals would start kind of in concert with the open. So as you're moving through the open, you're kind of in your pre-competition phase, getting ready for the quarterfinals. And then as the open finishes, you're kind of finishing up some simulations, and then you're ready to compete. Whereas now, as the open finishes, you're going to be moving into your pre-competition phase. So you're going to have, 4 or 5 weeks, 5 weeks, including the last week of the open, to begin preparing more specifically for the actual quarterfinals. So it gives you essentially another month of training that you get to add on in your off season or kind of preseason. So that'll partly depend on the level or where you think you're going to finish. So like somebody like you, it's giving us another month of training to work on things that you need before we need to start getting into more specific preparation for the actual quarterfinals. For somebody that's, well, again, given that's top 25%, almost nobody, I wouldn't say nobody, but most people don't really need specific prep for the open, because if you are training consistently on a weekly basis with good progressions, you'll probably get past the top 25% without a problem. So your focus now might be on, what things do I need to be developing to get me better prepared for the quarterfinals, which, given what I spoke about earlier, those big gaps are going to be higher skill gymnastics and your strength. So if you're working on those two things, that's probably something you need to be biasing for the next few months to try to move the needle a little bit, so that as you get closer, you're a little bit more prepared than you otherwise would be. So an extra month of training, essentially, if you were to look at it across the board from the start of December till April, you get about an extra month of like off-season training, and then you're probably going to start moving into some more preparation, but nothing too intense, and probably until February for most people. So that's good. That's good for a coach, because now we can work on things and refine before we need to now start focusing on actually getting ready for the competition.
Yeah. So you're seeing it as January now lends a little bit of extra time to the off season to build into the preseason, which now would look more like the open. There's even if you're kind of taking it easy, it's likely you'll hit some pretty intense pieces, because you're going to want to go hard on the open workouts, or just by nature of what the workout is, you might have to go really intense. So that would be the preseason. And then you have a month off, where maybe for some people they might need a little bit of a down period and ramping back up, or for some people that's really their start of their pre-comp going into quarterfinals.
So we'll put it two different groups, 3 different groups technically. Somebody who is vying for a top 40 spot, that person is probably not getting real intense in their preparation until mid-February. That's when you're going to start getting into, it's going to be more intense, and you're starting to get sharpened and ready for April. It'd be like mid-February for that group. So that's I'm trying to go to semis. Next group would be top 10% who are trying to improve upon last year or this last quarterfinals. They're going to start ramping up in mid-January or even earlier January, where it's going to start getting a little bit more challenging. And then the next group would be those that are 10 or 12% to 25. And that's December. It's going to start slowly building and ramping up for them, because you could also think of it this way, that based upon the training age and the exposure, that's going to influence how much time the system needs to get close to handling intensity really well. And so if somebody is in that third group, top 12% to 25%, their system's not really equipped or has the volume built or training experience to handle intensity and express it. So there needs to be a much slower kind of build to get them to a point where they can handle it, but not die from it. Whereas the top 10% people, they are a little bit more accustomed, a little bit more exposed. And so starting in mid-January, early January, we're starting to like speed it up a little bit. And so then that gives them a couple cycles of training to get them ready for the quarterfinals. And then for the final group, their system, they need maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and their system will be ready full speed to go for it. So it's going to come back to where they finished last year and what they're gunning for this year. And then that's going to influence like when you're going to start shifting it a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of that third group, the 12-ish to 25% group.
Yeah.
Let's just say you have 10 clients in there. You personally, what are you telling them? Are you saying, hey, I think, I get you qualified. You can go, let's do quarterfinals. Or are you saying, hey, I don't think you're ready. Here's why. It's a one-on-one basis. Or do you have like, hey, you're not quite at hitting, you can't string muscle ups together yet. You don't have 5. You haven't hit a body weight snatch, and you can't run for 10 minutes without stopping. Like this is this maybe not a waste of time, but this is not productive to your training. This is not something we should approach. Or, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, really good question.
Is it case by case, do you think?
Partially, but so here's how I think of it. In my head, I have certain things that I need people to be doing that lead up to competition for me to know that they're as prepared as possible. And in order for me to give those things in good conscience, I need to know they're capable of doing the training that gets them capable for all of that. And so if I know somebody isn't capable to do the training, to get them set up to do the things they need to do to get prepared for the competition, then it's not even a conversation to me, because like I can't give you the progressions that I would want to give you to make you prepared for the competition, because you're either not strong enough, you don't move well enough, your training age is too low, your body doesn't know how to handle intensity yet. Most of the times it always comes back to strength. They're just not strong enough, or they don't have the skill, which usually means they're also not strong enough. It always comes back to strength. So what inevitably happens is I'm giving them training that aligns with where they're at and what they can actually do and express. And then I'm sprinkling in some things that are challenging them and giving them a little bit of intensity, knowing that when they compete, they're going to, whatever they've got, they're going to show. But I know it's not all that's there, because they just aren't at that level yet. So, because the preparation wasn't as robust as I'd want it to be. So in conversation, to your point, that's what I would share with them. I'd go, yeah, we can do the open and you'll probably make the quarterfinals, but you can't actually do the training and preparation you need to do as well as possible at the quarterfinals, because you're not strong enough. You don't have the skills yet. You just don't have enough training volume built. So what we can do, because it can be a very good eye opener for that person of like, oh, wow, I'm actually a lot farther away from what I thought I was, or which ideally will spur a desire to work and improve and keep staying on the course. In most cases, as long as their perception of their ability level is somewhat relative to where they actually are. If it's really inflated, then that's a problem, because then they go in and they realize how bad they are and they get really mad because they actually thought they were really good. And then that's a problem, but that has to be fixed, way, way before that. So what I'll probably do is the ones that do want to compete, because you bring up a good point. If you do have to start moving the training towards getting them ready for intensity, you can be pulling away from the actual improvement of their fitness, because you're not working on things they need to work on. So what will probably happen is I'll tell them, okay, you'll probably make the quarterfinals. There'll probably be a lot of things in there you can't do. It's not worth the time for us to spend a lot of time working on those things right now, because the base support needed to practice those isn't there yet. So what are we going to do? We're going to keep working on getting stronger, improving the things you need to get better at. When the quarterfinals come, we'll see what the tests are, because we have no idea what they're going to be. And then we'll figure out what's the best path here for how we're going to execute these, or how we're going to do them. And I think in that vein, they're getting an exposure to competition and also a little bit of an eye opener. Like, okay, I have an idea of now what I need to be capable of. And again, like I said, it depends on the disposition of the person and the awareness, because my hope would be that they would see it as an opportunity to challenge themselves to work on getting closer to that point where they can actually express the tests. So it will be a case by case basis. I think the only person I'd probably go, we shouldn't do this, is the person who is injured or is dealing with injuries, and we're just not we're not making up ground, and we're just having to work around it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the training has to change a lot constantly because of the injury. So and most of the times they'll be in agreement with me on it, where they'll just say, yeah, it's probably not best to compete. It's like, yeah, the body's not cooperating.
Yeah.
This is not worth the time and energy. We need to pivot. So long-winded answer, but hopefully that gives some insight on how I think about that whole thing.
Okay. So real quick, before we kind of cap it off, you were discussing, the training looks very different. And from now into the preparation, and even in the end of January to the end of February. So let's just talk about someone who's at 10-ish%. They're looking at quarterfinals. They're preparing for quarterfinals now, in essence. But, what is the kind of the theme of training now versus what it would look like in February? So like today they're going into the gym, they're warming up. Why is it looking different now compared to February, or, what it is? And then, that can kind of probably describe why.
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to think about it would be you reverse engineer, you work back from the actual competition. So the closer you are to competition, the more your training should be replicating what the competition is going to be. And then the further you are from it, the less it's going to replicate it. You're working on derivatives of the actual competition or the themes that are being tested. So now in November into December, the person that is top 10%, we're probably working on characteristics of what they're going to be tested on. So that could be grip endurance, that could be shoulder flexion endurance while inverted, that could be muscle endurance in the quads, that could be improving their bending strength, and by extension their bending endurance. Like, it could be these specific aspects that act as the base from which, when we layer things together, they're being challenged on these things in unison with other things. Because at the sport level, you have all these things kind of mixed together, but you can't train them all the time like that. You have to pull out certain aspects, work on developing them, then bringing them together, work on doing that, and then you put it all together, and then you see how they do it. So for that subgroup, right now they're working on individual characteristics. It's not as integrated as much. There might be some pieces that are integrated, meaning we're blending ideas together in the training, but most of it is separated to continue working on raising the ground floor and elevating their ceiling. And then come January, now we're starting to integrate it more. And then February, it's more. And then March is now, we're in like the pre-competition, and we're starting to, practice the expression of the sport in its natural form.
Okay. So you could just possibly think of it as, right now we're working on pressing and squatting. Then you might blend it to a strength of thruster. Then you might blend it into speed of thruster, into thruster with another thing,
Yeah, that's a good way.
As layman as it could, as simple as it could get. But right now you are not preparing for the competition of, quarterfinals, but you are preparing to prepare for quarterfinals.
Exactly. That's a good way of thinking about it.
Okay.
Preparing to prepare for the actual competition. It's three different things: the competition, the preparation for the competition, and then the training that prepares you for the preparation.
Okay.
It sounds like a lot, but that's what you're really doing. And that's why, you need the bulk of the year to be this, which is doing the training to actually prepare you to do the work you need to do so you can compete and express the tests. And a lot of people don't, that's hard for them to wrap their head around.
Yeah. Expression in general is hard to understand, which could be a good topic to discuss later. What does it truly mean to express the test? And what it takes to get there? And, is there levels to that? So, anything you want to add to the season, or anything you want to add to preparation or thoughts?
No, I think we hit on some really good things, and I think that was good.
Yeah. Okay. So for those listening, if anything resonated with you or you have questions, you can always comment. You could send us some direct messages. You can email us, however you find it suitable to get in contact with us. You could ask us some questions. I know for me, you wouldn't be bothering me. You would definitely be, it would excite me to have to answer some questions about the sport to some people. If you were engaged and you liked the podcast, that was awesome. And maybe you should like, comment, subscribe, or reach out to us about things that you liked in terms of the coaching. If you think that you need help, maybe it's time for you to reach out to a coach. Maybe it's time for you to jump on a program. We do offer group programs as well. So if you are kind of interested in what we're talking about, but not ready to make that leap into getting a coach or joining the organization at a one-on-one level, there is a group program available that can help you prepare for quarterfinals and can help you understand what it truly means to train for the sport, not just come into the gym and work out, but understand what it means to attack your weaknesses and, build and prepare. And that could give you a really good foundation and understanding what the coaching and methodology that we use is like. So there's an option for that. You can go to OPEX RC, OPEXRemoteCoaching.com to learn more about that. You can check out our Instagram. Or just message one of us to discuss a little bit more. If you are just interested in some one-on-one coaching, that is what our expertise is. You could join. You could have a consultation. You could chat and see what it's really all about and understand that individual coaching is the best approach for sport, especially our sport. And we would love to help you get to the next level and be the best version of yourself. And if you guys have any questions or anything you would want to hear about, we would love to chat about it. So you could send us a message about that as well. You got any plugs?
No, it sounds like you hit on everything that would be a plug. Yeah.
Yeah. You can catch Sam on Instagram at Coach Sam Smith. He puts out a lot of great content. He shares a lot about his clients. He goes into depth on some deep topics and shares a lot about what he's reading and learning. So it's a great resource for a coach, a great resource for an athlete as well. My Instagram is my name at Roman Burkan. Most of my stuff is some lifting, how to get strong, and some tips. So there'll be some more action on there soon. But yeah, if you made it this far, we really appreciate you listening. And hope we could have. I hope we lent some knowledge to you that's usable, and hopefully the episodes just get better and better.
Thanks, Roman.
No problem, man. Thanks for joining. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you have a great day.